She was named the Mississippi Poet Laureate in January by the Library of Congress and will bestow the title of the 19th U.S. Laureate soon. Please now join me in welcoming today's honored guest, Mississippi and Poet Laureate, Miss Natasha Tretheway.
Thank you very much. It's so great to see so many of you here. Thank you for coming. I'm delighted to be back in my home state and also at this institution that Margaret Walker Alexander spent so much of her life teaching and doing her own work, which has meant a great deal to me. I think you'll hear some of that later on. I'm going to read from a few different books today, even though I have a new collection just out. At its most essential level, my work is always concerned with history, the intersections of public and personal history, and the contentions and historical memory of our shared past. My home state, Mississippi, is an important part of my consideration of history and my place in it. I'm going to start with a poem that articulates my sense of an intimate engagement with the past. As Faulkner said, the past isn't dead, it isn't even past. Thus, for me, writing about history is always also writing about the present, and it is a way to imagine our possible future. Pilgrimage, Vicksburg, Mississippi. Here, the Mississippi carved its mud-dark path, a graveyard for skeletons of sunken riverboats. Here, the river changed its course, turning away from the city as one turns, forgetting from the past. The abandoned bluffs, land sloping up above the river's bend, where now the Yazoo fills the Mississippi's empty bed. Here, the dead stand up in stone, white marble on Confederate Avenue. I stand on ground once hollowed by a web of caves. They must have seemed like catacombs in 1863. To the woman sitting in her parlor, candle watching shells explode, candle lit underground, I can see her writing herself into history, asking what is to become of all the living things in this place. This whole city is a grave. Every spring pilgrimage, the living come to mingle with the dead, brush against their cold shoulders in the long hallways, listen all night to their silence and indifference, relive their dying on the green battlefield. At the museum, we marvel at their clothes, preserved under glass, so much smaller than our own, as if those who wore them were only children. We sleep in their beds, the old mansions hunkered on the bluffs, draped in flowers, funereal, a blur of petals against the river's gray. The brochure in my room calls this living history. The brass plate on the door reads, Prissy's room. A window frames the river's crawl toward the Gulf. In my dream, the ghost of history lies down beside me, rolls over, pins me beneath a heavy arm. So this next poem comes out of my experience. Thank you very much, but please feel welcome to hold your applause. Thank you. So I'm from the Mississippi Gulf Coast, born in Gulfport, and I should say, one of the reasons that I think I had to write my last book of poems, Native Guard, is that I was born April 26, 1966, which was exactly 100 years to the first time that Mississippi celebrated Confederate Memorial Day. And I thought it was a great irony that I should be a black biracial daughter of this state, born on Confederate Memorial Day. I've asked people to call me Dixie many times. It hasn't caught on. I used to go out to Ship Island with my grandmother Every 4th of July, take a tour of the fort and then go out to the beach and have a picnic. And at no point during our tour did the park ranger ever mention anything about the black soldiers who had been stationed on Ship Island. When I finally found out about that bit of forgotten history, I knew I had to try to recover something of the story of those forgotten soldiers. This is a poem that has an epigraph from Alan Tate that reads, "Now that the salt of their blood stiffens the saltier oblivion of the sea." Elegy for the Native Guards. We leave Gulfport at noon, gulls overhead trailing the boat, streamers, noisy fanfare all the way to Ship Island. What we see first is the fort, its roof of grass, a lee, half reminder of the men who served there, a weathered monument to some of the dead. Inside we follow the ranger, hurried though we are to get to the beach. He tells of graves lost in the Gulf, the island split in half when Hurricane Camille hit, shows us casemates, cannons, the store that sells souvenirs, tokens of history long buried. The Daughters of the Confederacy has placed a plaque here at the fort's entrance, each Confederate soldier's name raised hard in bronze, no names carved for the Native Guards, 2nd Regiment, Union men, black phalanx. What is monument to their legacy? All the grave markers, all the crude headstones, water lost. Now fish dart among their bones, and we listen for what the waves intone. Only the fort remains, near 40 feet high, round, unfinished, half open to the sky. The elements, wind, rain, God's deliberate eye.